Sometimes when you're facing the giants in your life, it's just another opportunity to strengthen your faith and to help you see where you truly stand and to let you know what you truly believe in and if you'll stand against all odds. And that's exactly what we'll see today as we look at this lesson, the faith of David. The faith of David. Our scripture text will be found in 1 Samuel chapter 17, verses 31 through 37, verse 45, and 48 through 50. And it reads, 1 Samuel 17, 31 through 37. And when the words were heard which David spake, they rehearsed them before Saul, and he sent for him. And David said to Saul, Let no man's heart fall because of him. Thy servant will go and fight with this Philistine. And Saul said to David, Thou art not able to go against this Philistine to fight with him, for thou art but a youth, and he a man of war from his youth. And David said unto Saul, Thy servant kept his father's sheep, and there came a lion and a bear, and took a lamb out of the flock. And I went after him, and smote him, and delivered it out of his mouth. And when he arose against me, I caught him by his beard, and smote him, and slew him. Thy servant slew both the lion and the bear, and this uncircumcised Philistine shall be as one of them, seeing he hath defiled the armies of the living God. David said, Moreover, the Lord that delivereth me out of the paw of the lion and out of the paw of the bear, he will deliver me out of the hand of this Philistine. And Saul said unto David, Go, and thy Lord be with thee. Verses 45 and then 48 through 50 read, Then said David to the Philistine, Thou comest to me with a sword, and with a spear, and with a shield, but I come to thee in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom thou hast defiled. And it came to pass, when the Philistine arose and came and drew nigh to meet David, that David hastened and ran toward the army to meet the Philistine. And David put his hand in his bag, and took thence a stone, and slang it, and smote the Philistine in his forehead, that the stone sunk into his forehead, and he fell upon his face to the earth. So David prevailed over the Philistine with a sling and with a stone, and smote the Philistine, and slew him. But there was no sword in David's hands. Now, this is the lesson of David and Goliath, in case you didn't pick that up from the reading. And this starts off with verse 31, where David had heard how all of the men of Israel were afraid to confront Goliath because Goliath was a giant. And so Goliath had taken to teasing the men and defiling or talking about or criticizing and making fun of the armies of Israel and of the God of Israel. Well, when David heard of this, he became very vexed because he couldn't see why all of the men were scared of this one giant, this one man. So he said, I'll fight him. I'll go fight him. Well, when the king heard of this, Saul heard of it, he sent for David. And when he saw David, he said, David, you can't go up against Goliath. You can't go up against this giant. You're but a youth. You're but a child. And this giant, this Goliath, he had been a fighter since he was a youth. And he's a grown man. He said, there's no way that you can go up against this giant. However, David had enough faith by his experiences, even though he was young. So he began to tell the king how he was a keeper of his father's sheep. And if he was a shepherd, he was chosen to protect those sheep from wild animals, from the elements, and from whatever arose. It was his responsibility to protect and to take care of the sheep. So he even gave an example to the king. He said at one point a lion came to eat up some of the sheep. He said, but I fought that lion and I prevailed. He said, then a bear came to get some of the sheep from the sheepfold. He said, and I confronted the bear and I prevailed. So he went on to tell the king, because of these experiences, he knew that if he went up against Goliath in the name of the Lord, that he would prevail against this giant also. So he told the king, I'll go. He said, just like I won over the lion and the bear because of my God, I can win over this giant, this Goliath. So Saul told him, okay, go ahead and try it. Go ahead and do it. And we see here when we jump over to 45 that David did go to the Philistine. He went to Goliath. Now, Goliath came after David. He had a sword in his hand and a spear and a shield. He was set for battle. He had what he thought he would need to win the battle. But then when David confronted him, he had nothing in his hand. He didn't have a sword. He didn't have a shield. He didn't even have a spear to throw at the giant. But he still told the Philistine, he told Goliath, he said, just because you've been defiling the God, our God, he said, I'm going to beat you. I'm going to go up against you. So he ran towards the army of the Philistines. And when he got to Goliath, he put his hand in his bag. And when he put his hand in the bag, all he took out was one stone and a slingshot. And he aimed that slingshot at Goliath. And when he aimed the slingshot at Goliath, he hit him right in the center of his forehead. And it killed him on the spot. And Goliath fell down. He fell with his face to the earth. So David did prevail over the Philistine with the slingshot and a stone. But this lets us know that's all David had in his hand. But he had faith in his God. And this, just like from the other times he had prevailed, he was confident that he would prevail again. And this lesson to me had several levels of things we could look at. But it tells us sometimes when we feel like we're getting weak in faith or even trying to get the faith to do something, that all we need to do is take time and look back over all of the victories that our God's already given us and some of the things that he's already brought us through, and we'll know that we can be victorious. David did this, and he stood up for what he believed. He was willing to put his life on the line. So ask yourself the question, when God gives you a hard thing to do, when he gives you something that you're unsure about, when you have to face the giants in your life, will you approach them having your faith grounded in God, or will you run away or turn back or to refuse to face what is ahead? It doesn't take a lot. Like I said, David didn't have a sword, he didn't have a spear, and he didn't have a shield. He just had God. So when you go forward, know that the strongest weapon you could ever have is faith in God, because he is your protector. See you next week.